Victims of human trafficking usually experience severe physical abuse, serious health risk, and even potential mental health issues due to constant anxiety, trauma, and fear. Rescued victims also face the risk of returning into these abusive situations if they are not properly cared for. This is NAPTIP on the Move, and I am Emmanuel Okeke. Thank you for joining us. Today, we shall look into the role of NAPTIP in caring for rescued victims through counseling and rehabilitation. This is a must-watch. Stay with us.
Trafficked victims usually suffer trauma, emotional, physical, and psychological abuse. The Counselling and Rehabilitation Department of the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons ensures the total well-being of rescued victims.
We have this saying that we are the heartbeat of elimination of human trafficking, in the sense that we are fighting human trafficking, but when you pick victims of human trafficking and then you don't give them proper care and attention, and then be able to make them become stable and self-sustaining, and then self-reliant, and then be able to regain their self-esteem, you find out that there's a likelihood of their going back to the same experience where they were taken from. So the work of the department is to ensure that victims of human trafficking are given the necessary support and assistance services that will make them never ever think of going back to that phenomenon. We try to counsel them and then reintegrate them back into the society. So basically, our work here is to transform highly traumatized victims of human trafficking and then make them become meaningful citizens of the society.
There are laid down procedures for counseling and rehabilitating victims.
When you see a victim anywhere, you don't just overlook or handle he or she anyhow. Some may be sent to us by other stakeholders who collaborate with us, like the other law enforcement agencies, NGOs, and even people who are in the neighborhood where such things are happening. And then once we receive them, we bring them into our shelter. And then we allow them some period of rest. You don't just bring them and begin to speak to them. Just give them a bed space in the shelter, and we assign them to a counselor. And then we bring in the nurse. The nurse does the medical services of making sure that if there's any medical problem that we need to give attention, we start from the onset to give such medical attention. Some of them come in with some forms of diseases, sicknesses, and then so on. So you don't just allow them to mingle with others immediately, and then we'll start taking care of them. Now, after we have allowed them to relax, we then begin to, talk to them, debrief them, and then get more information from them.
The standard operating procedures have been documented as a policy guideline.
Now, this is the National Policy on Protection and Assistance to Victims of Human Trafficking. So this is now the documents that guides all our operations in the Counseling and Rehabilitation Department. And then because it's a policy document, it is now being broken down into the nitty-gritty so that you know exactly what you're supposed to do. What number of victims is a counselor supposed to handle at any particular time? It gives you the do's and then don'ts. The rights of victims, because they have rights. We then have this. This is a book that guides our relationship with other stakeholders. At what point do you send to another stakeholder? We also have another document for our monitoring. What and what do you see that will now enable you to know that a victim has reached a stage where she can now be disengaged? This is the monitoring and evaluation guide. This is also a document that helps us in our operation. This helps us in relating with other departments in the agency here, as well as other law enforcement agencies, so that everybody knows that a victim is a human that's supposed to be taken good care of. And all these together all help us in achieving the mandate of the department, which is the total transformation of victims into successful and then meaningful citizens of the country.
To ensure the well-being of victims, NAPTIP has shelters in all its zonal commands and the Federal Capital Territory.
And these shelters are located at our zonal commands. The zonal commands are located in Lagos, in Benin, in Enugu, in Uyo, in Osogbo, in Kano, in Maiduguri, and in Sokoto. And then we now have another shelter in Makurdi also. Yes, we have 10 zonal commands, then including Abuja. So altogether we have 11 shelters. Because without shelter, you cannot do this work. For us, these are a special class of people who have gone through traumatic experience where they have been dehumanized and then debased. So if you don't handle them very well, you may lose them completely. And some of them may go into depression, or if some of them tendency of even committing suicide. So it is now our work to bring back life into them through the various services we offer to them. We bring them into the shelter. We'll now begin to counsel such an individual. You counsel the person, talk to the person, you bring in the different aspects of psychosocial therapy, and then whatever will make the person to feel well.
Continuous capacity development of all staff of the Counselling and Rehabilitation Department is key.
All of us in the department, we are all social workers. All of us have gone to trainings to acquire the necessary skills that will help us to work as social workers. Like many of us went to University of Ibadan, also to Benue State University, because the agency really wants to professionalize the department. So for anyone that comes in, at the time comes up, we are sent to that place. And it's not just a one-off training. As time goes on, they go and then update their knowledge in care and assistance to victims of human trafficking.
The shelters also provide recreation, skills acquisition, and some form of education to victims due to its closed shelter system.
The shelter is like a home away from home. Many of them, after they have stayed in our shelter, find it very hard to go home because they have made new friends with other children that are in the shelter, and even the way our counselors have handled them. We also, in the process of counseling them, we find out what they really want to do. Because picking them and then staying in the shelter and then going home, we have not succeeded in doing anything. So when we're able to identify what they want to do, actually, then we can then proceed in line with their choice. We don't force anything on them. Their consent is very, very necessary for every action we take on every victim. So while they're in the shelter, we keep them busy, like making of hats, beads making, tailoring, computer training, as well as we do a little kind of a formal education. Many of them, because they are very young, tell you that they want to go back to school. But because we run a closed shelter, we have other NGOs that we collaborate with that will help us to keep them, and then from there they go to schools. And for those of them that want to learn any trade, from the little we expose them to in the shelter, they can pick interest, and then they will go, when they go from the shelter, they go to their communities, and then we identify local skills trainers who can help us to further whatever interest they want to pursue. And when they finish, we'll try and then empower them. And we also have recreational facilities, not just walk. If you get to the shelter, you see the recreational facilities that are there in the shelter. They eat their food in the morning, they go into all these activities, then in the afternoon they go for their lunch, Then after lunch, they go for their siesta, and then after then, they can then go into all these recreational activities, and then till evening time when they take their dinner, have their baths, pray, and then go to bed.
Family tracing is carried out during rehabilitation and counseling for possible reunion of the victim.
We're able to identify where they are coming from, and then get to their parents and then relate to them that their child is here with us in NAPTIP. And then it will surprise you that at times when you are able to trace their families, the kind of reactions you get from their families, many of them will tell you, tell Amo, we are not ready to receive her. If you know what others do there, Mama Eliza, Mama, this person is now doing this and doing because of what her daughter has done for them. Now my own will be the story. Many of them are not ready to accept these victims. So what we do is that when such is the case, in as much as we have identified where they are coming from, we don't take them to such families. We'll still continue to counsel the family until they are ready to accept them. And then where they still refuse to, we keep them in our shelters and then leave them there and then still continue with the family. We can then proceed to the extended family and see if there's any relation of theirs that is ready to accept them, because we believe that in as much as we are trying to rehabilitate them, that rehabilitation is better done in the family. So we better make sure that we succeed by getting somebody in the family that is able to accept them, and then they can reintegrate into the family circle. Reunion takes place in the locality of the victim. And because we have done the family tracing, we know where the victim is coming from. We have spoken with the family, and then they are now ready to accept their child or children. So what we do is that during the process of reunion, the family knows when we are coming because we have to communicate with them. If the victim is coming from Abuja here, we have zonal commands. So we transfer the victim to our zonal command. The counselor from Abuja transfer to that zonal command. Then the counselor in that zonal command, alongside the counselor from Abuja, will then drive to the victim's locality or community, and then we not just hand it over to the parents. Yes, they are the people, the immediate family relations of the victim, but we try to bring people within that community. We use that opportunity to sensitize them on the evils of human trafficking and the need for them not to give out their children to anybody.
NAPTIP, in collaboration with other agencies, also monitors the victims after reuniting them with their families to ensure they are well integrated and not re-trafficked.
At the zonal commands, we also collaborate with NGOs at that level, as well as the ministries of women affairs at that level, and another law enforcement agency at that level also. So they assist the agency in monitoring those victims. The agency monitor, the NGOs also help us. The information comes to NAPTIP, and then we have a data bank where we keep all this information. We also have their case files where we also keep information about these victims. And when they have reached the stage, you can determine by watching the victim and how far he has gone in that rate. You can then say, yes, that this person has reached a stage where he can disengage.
For proper treatment of victims, the Director, Counselling and Rehabilitation, Dr. Eunice Anuforom, appeals to other sister agencies and security bodies to refer trafficked victims to NAPTIP. Sheltering, counselling and rehabilitating victims comes with diverse challenges.
Many a time, they are not ready to talk to you. And especially those victims of human trafficking who have not really gotten to their destination. They still think that you are depriving them of their greener pastures that they are going to face over there. So for those kind of victims, they are very, very aggressive. And another group that are equally very aggressive are probably those of them that have just arrived in their destination countries and the law fell out on them and then they were repatriated to the country. It's like all that they spend to get to that place is a loss. And you find out that many a time even parents encourage them, and then many of their parents may not even be ready to accept them. So right beneath you, they start being aggressive to you. And then you have to bring in all that you have learned as a counselor to ensure that such a person is actually ready to speak to you. And because of the large influx of victims, both victims of abuse and then trafficking, we have large numbers of children, and the capacity they exceed the capacity those shelters are supposed to have. And most times they exceed even the budgetary allocation we have, because you cannot really estimate the number of victims you can have at any particular time. The fight against human trafficking is not just a fight we can leave for only one agency. It's a fight where everybody has to come in. Everybody should really help the much you can, in whatever capacity you can. You can be sure that whatever you give to NAPTIP will be prudently used, and then there's always accountability.
In spite of the challenges, the agency has been able to reintegrate some victims.
Some of them go through their primary school, go to their secondary, and then enter the university. Right now we have about 5 of them in the university, and then 3 have graduated. 3 have graduated. 1 read accountancy and had a second-class upper division, and that's a thumbs up for the agency.
Here is an advice for parents and guardians.
Human trafficking is such a subtle thing that even somebody who is very close to you traffics somebody, and you may be thinking that it's my sister or it's my uncle, it's my auntie. No, the person has an ulterior motive. We have situations where people will go to relations, take their children and bring them to the town here, and then leave them on the street to be begging. The mother doesn't know, or the parents don't know, that their child that was taken from them are now being exploited in the town for begging. And then also, I know that many state governments have education free, especially at the primary school level. So they should leave the children to go to school. If anybody wants to help them, let the person come and then help them within there.
With special care and conditioning of highly traumatized victims into stable, successful citizens, the Counselling and Rehabilitation Department is indeed the heartbeat of the agency.
Human trafficking, popularly known as modern-day slavery, is very much with us, even in this 21st century. It is a crime against God and humanity. You may be thinking, this message is not for me. Think again, because if you are paying your employee through an agent, you are a trafficker. If you employ a child under 12 years as a domestic worker, you are a trafficker. If you abduct a person against their will, keep and exploit them for monetary gains, you are a trafficker. If you promise international jobs with the intention to exploit the victim sexually and for cheap labor, you are a trafficker. If you buy and sell human organs, you are a trafficker. There are so many components of trafficking with devastating effects on the victims. This victim may be your daughter, son, brother, sister, mother, or father. Let us be our brother's keeper. Join hands with NAPTIP to stop human trafficking now.
Report cases of human trafficking to these NAPTIP hotlines: 0703 00 203, 080 02 255 627847. NAPTIP, empowered to protect you.
Now you know that NAPTIP plays a major role in rehabilitating and reintegrating trafficked victims. This is a call to all well-meaning Nigerians to support the shelters and a plea to sister agencies to refer human trafficking cases to NAPTIP for proper debriefing, counseling and rehabilitation. NAPTIP event is next. Keep watching. Team NAPTIP, led by the Director General, Dame Julie Okudonli, paid a courtesy visit to the Egyptian ambassador to Nigeria, His Excellency Ambassador Asim Hanafi.
We're all here to seek ways of strengthening partnership between NAPTIP and your embassy and with other law enforcement agencies in Egypt through you, your embassy here. We're also seeking ways of addressing the root causes of irregular migration, which has become a problem, and trafficking of persons, because you cannot separate one from the other, so that together we can fight it.
The Director General of NAPTIP also highlighted areas of concern.
There are new dimensions in human trafficking, which is the organ harvesting. It's a serious problem. My request today is to strengthen the channels of exchange of information between NAPTIP and Egypt and other relevant law enforcement agencies in Egypt on issues of human trafficking and smuggling of migrants. 2, there is need to protect the victims of human trafficking, especially when they need help, and at the same time give us the information that will lead to the prosecution of suspected traffickers.
Welcoming the NAPTIP delegation, the Egyptian ambassador to Nigeria, His Excellency Ambassador Asim Hanafi, pointed out suspected cases of trafficking and promised to share relevant information.
We look forward to bilateral cooperation. It's in our best interest. We have nothing to hide from. We are afflicted by this scourge, and we sympathize with the victims. We should try to treat them as victims and not as criminals, and we should apprehend the perpetrators. The visas, of course, we will share with you. Any suspicious travel agency, we will share with you.
The courtesy visit yielded good results as both parties agreed to sign a memorandum of understanding towards joint intelligence sharing, mutual legal assistance and joint investigation with a view to crush human trafficking rings operating within the region. The National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, NAPTIP, recently recorded another conviction. One Gift Noye Okatu, a housewife based in Lagos, was sentenced to 13 years imprisonment at the Lagos State High Court for harboring two girls, both aged 12 years old, for the purpose of forced labor, domestic work and treatment as slaves, contrary to sections 22, 23 and 25 of the Trafficking in Persons Prohibition Administration Act of 2015. The convict was arrested by NAPTIP operatives following a tip-off from concerned Nigerians. With this verdict, a total of 337 convictions have so far been recorded by the agency. A delegation from the Conference of Western Attorney Generals and the African Alliance Partnership, led by Marcus Green, recently paid a courtesy visit to the headquarters of the agency. The head of the delegation gave a background of the organization and spoke on the purpose of their visit.
CWAG is an organization that started in the United States several years ago. Started primarily focused on 15 western states in the U.S., including California, Colorado, and other states in the West, with the sole goal of working with state attorneys general to make the administration of justice easier, build capacity, work on training on issues such as human trafficking, drug interdiction, cross-border crimes, a whole host of issues, consumer protection, issues that relate to the individual citizens of those various states and helping attorneys generals to do their jobs better. And so we said, well, why not the continent of Africa? How can we be helpful? How can we exchange information on issues such as human trafficking and other big issues of the day? And so the Africa Alliance Partnership was created as a sub-body of CWAG.
Areas of partnership were also highlighted.
The difficulty in dealing with human trafficking cases, as you know, are the same difficulties that we have. How do you protect the witnesses? How do you get witnesses to come forward? How do you fund it? How do you prove it? Making sure you have the proper legislation in place to bring the cases with the maximum amount of penalty. How do you seize assets associated with human trafficking? So all of these issues we've been talking about. And so we just wanted to kind of sit with you, kind of hear some of your thoughts about what you do here, hear some of your thoughts about the Academy, and then maybe look for ways that we can work together.
Responding, the Director General of NAPTIP, Damjili Okodunle, commended the organization and proposed other areas of partnership.
Human trafficking, you are all conversant with. The new dimension it has taken when you talk about organ harvesting now, that is a very worrisome one for us. And if you think about it, this thing has been going on since time immemorial. You know, organ trafficking. You discover some bodies are found without some organs like the heart, the kidneys, the livers, and people just take it for granted. And unfortunately for us, our law gives us the powers to investigate that. We've also had cases where these so-called labor agencies are now recruiting a lot of our youths to Saudi Arabia in their thousands, and this is very worrisome to us. They tell us they are taking them there for jobs as housemates. And the truth is, these girls are treated very badly. They are not paid at all. Some of them are also used for sexual exploitation and, of course, organ harvesting. Most of them are killed. They never come back. How do we monitor these ones that go out, even if they are going for jobs? How do we monitor them to be sure that they are safe, they are paid their wages as they should be, and they come back whenever they want to come back? So there's so much going on, and we really need to collaborate with as many agencies or many partners as possible.
The proposed collaboration between the Conference of Western Attorney Generals and the African Alliance Partnership with the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons will yield fruitful results in stemming the tide of human trafficking in Africa.
For For more enquiries and support or to report cases of suspected human trafficking and child abuse, please call NAPTIP hotlines on 0703 0000203 or 0800 2255 627847 or email info@naptip.gov.ng. Visit our website www.naptip.gov.ng. Follow us on our social media platforms at NAPTIP Nigeria and watch our videos on YouTube.
This is where we draw the curtain on today's episode. Be your brother's keeper. Prevent human trafficking by reporting suspected cases to NAPTIP. Till I come your way, same time next week, speak out against human trafficking. I am Emmanuel Okeke, and I must thank you for watching.